Hi guys, and welcome to my China project. Today we're going to be talking about China and all of its 8 aspects of culture. Okay, so we're going to start off with the religions of China and like the percentages and stuff, and I might explain a couple religions. And yeah. Okay, so China is 50% non-religious, which means they don't believe in religion. It is 28.5% Chinese religions like Confucianism and that stuff. 8.38% Buddhist, 7.25 Christian, and yeah. So I'm gonna explain Buddhism, which we already did in social studies class, but I think I'm required to do it. But anyway, we're just gonna run through it real quick. So Buddhism, like it's the 8-step path. Like you keep on being reincarnated if you do stuff, and you get reincarnated into better stuff and better stuff, and until you reach nirvana, which is the end state of peace and joy. And yeah, it all started with some guy called Siddhartha Gautama, and he later became known as the Buddha. And he basically says like you should try to stay in the middle class, and because people are too attached to physical belongings and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay, now I'm gonna explain Confucianism. Okay, so it all started by this guy called Confucius. In Chinese that's called Kongfuzi, and like it's more of a way of life, and he has a bunch of books that he wrote, and it's mostly about like how to live life. It's like his teachings on like manners and how to behave with other people and stuff like that. So we're gonna move on to the history of China, and we're gonna start off with holidays. And yeah, okay, so they have New Year's like us, which is like New Year's, January 1st, like countdown and stuff like that. And then like they have a bunch of nice food, Chinese food. They have shu cai, which is vegetables and stuff like that. I'll get into that in daily life. Anyway, they have the Lantern Fest, which is February 22nd, and like I think you guys have seen images of that on Google. Like it's where they all go down to the river and they lift up the lanterns over the river. It hovers above and it looks super pretty. Anyway, and they have Chinese New Year, which is February 8th, and yeah, they have a bunch of customs with that. They have Hongbao, which is like basically red envelope, which is filled with money, and it's really cool. And they also have the Dragon Fest then, which is a bunch of guys dressed up in a dragon costume walking around and dancing. Okay, they also have Christmas, just like us, and I think you guys know what that is. It's on December. I know you guys know what that is. Anyway, it's on December 25th, and you get presents, Santa Claus, stuff like that. Yeah, you guys already know. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the history of China, like the actual history, like what happened back then, and yeah. Okay, so they had dynasties, which is a line of rulers from a single family who would hold power until it was overthrown by another family. Okay, another thing about China is that paper was invented in China, yeah. Like it was invented under the Han Dynasty in about AD 100, and government officials used that to like record records and stuff like that, and so like that's how we know like when the dynasties were and stuff, and we know a bunch of their history and stuff. Anyway, they also encouraged overland trade, which was like on the Silk Road, and they used a lot of and they traded a bunch of stuff like tea, clay pots, porcelain, paper, spices, and stuff like that. Okay, later after that, the Chinese, they started waterways, which made it easier to travel and like transport goods and stuff. And then farmers started to use that for their irrigation in the fields, which then produced a lot more rice, which made the population grow a lot because they had a lot of rice and food to eat. And so then after that, China's population greatly increased. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly name out all of the dynasties that were in rule in chronological order, okay? So it first started with the Xia dynasty, and they ruled from 2200 to 1700 BC. Then it goes Shang, Zhao, Qin, Han, Sui, Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, Qing. Okay, but like after the dynasties, like later dynasties, the Mughal rulers invaded Central Asia in about 1211, and they took control over it, but they still relied on Chinese government officials to run the government. And the Mongol rule unified China, and it sort of brought peace to the area, and they encouraged trade a lot. Okay, during that time, there's a famous person called Marco Polo, who is a traveler from Venice, Italy, and he sort of traveled China and like Asia, and he found a lot of cool stuff there. He found like perfume, like also paper. He found a bunch of spices, tea, and he found gunpowder, which he thought was really cool. And then like when he came back to Europe, he showed like everybody and taught everybody about China and how they had a bunch of cool stuff, and then they started trading with China. Okay, so for daily life, we're going to be talking about food first. China eats a lot of rice, vegetables, pork, beef, a bunch of other stuff, and they also really like dumplings, which taste really good. They have something called chao fan, which is fried rice, and that tastes really, really good. They also have niu rou, which is basically beef, and they also have shu cai, which is a variety of vegetables, which also tastes really good, and which you can mix with the rice, which also tastes really good. And yeah, there's also kanji, which is like soupy rice, which is like rice with too much water. There's youtiao, which tastes really good. It's like fried dough. And there's soy milk, which is called doujiang, and that also tastes really good. And you can drink it with sugar, or you can drink it salty. And then there's xiaobing, which is basically a baked bread, which tastes good with the youtiao. So yeah. Okay, so they mostly live in apartments in the city that like stack really high, which is kind of cool. And for their clothes, they sort of dress like us, basically. Like, there's not really anything different, but we're gonna move on. Anyway, okay, so there's young people. The young people are taught to respect the elderly, and all the cities is filled with lots of air and water pollution. And education is highly valued because learning is viewed extremely important in Asia. And so some children can attend school 6 days a week. And after school, they go to extra school after school to learn more stuff. Also in China, if you don't live in a city, you sort of live in a village, which like one of like these ones, and sometimes it's in the mountains, and mostly they're farmers, and yeah. Okay, and in the cities, they have a bunch of traffic and skyscrapers and stuff, and it looks awesome. And they also have walkways throughout the cities, which is like bridges that you can walk on, and they go through malls and everything. They're suspended up on poles, and they look really cool. Okay, now we're gonna move on to language in China, which is Chinese. Okay, anyway, so they have sort of a alphabet, which there's two types. There's Zhuoying, and then there's Pinyin. And Pinyin is basically like an English alphabet, and they have 4 different accents: 二声, 一声, 四声, 三声. Okay, so 一声 is just plain and flat, 三声 is deep, 四声 is like sort of like louder, I guess, like it's more accented, and then 二声 is higher up, like you start from bottom to up, and yeah. Anyway, and the other type is Zhuoying, which is like that's they use a variety of characters to tell like so you can just spell out characters that make words, and so then you don't actually have to know how to say the actual Chinese character. You can just look at the alphabet, I guess, on the side of it, which is really easy. And yeah, and there's like a lot of dialects. There's almost like a dialect for every city. So like there's like Shanghai dialect for that. The Chinese language, to write it, it's pretty complicated because like you have to like memorize all the strokes in the character, which can take a lot of strokes. And yeah. Okay, so now I'm gonna just say a bunch of Chinese phrases and like teach you some phrases. So pretty sure all of you guys know this one. This is hello, which is ni hao. And then there's goodbye, 再见. And then there's dog, go. And then there's Hobbs, which is Hobbs. And then there's, I meant to say cat. Anyway, and then there's cat, which is Mao. And yeah, could pretty much go all day. But anyway, we're not gonna do that. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the social groups of China. Okay, so like it didn't really say like how many like white or like black people are in China, but it said like the actual Chinese ethnicities of China, so I'm just gonna go through that. So like the biggest one is Zhuang, which is 16.9 million. Then it's Uyghur, which is 11.5 million, and then it goes Hui, Manchu, Miao, and then etc. Okay, so we're gonna go through the social groups of China, like back then, like who had the most power and stuff. So it was first kings and emperors who had the most power. Then they had the scholars, like Confucius. Then they had the poor peasants, and then the workers and craftsmen, and then finally they had the merchants and women. So yeah. Okay, now we're gonna move on to arts in China. Okay, so they have a bunch of art. A lot of times paint mountains with like clouds on them. They sort of have like a Chinese poem written on the side. And yeah, they also paint a lot of dragons, and they use the color red a lot because that means like fortune, good stuff. And yeah, they also make a bunch of fans, which looks really cool because like they can paint on the fans, and they can also draw mountains on the fans. And yeah, they also have calligraphy, which is like the style of writing using like a sort of a paintbrush. It looks really cool though, like, and you can draw a bunch of traditional characters and stuff like that. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the government of China, and yeah, okay, so it is communist. And Xi Jinping, I totally butchered his name. I should know how to say this. Xi Jinping is the president, and so like they recently started moving toward a market economy. They used to be a command economy, which like the government sort of controlled everything, but now it's more of a market economy, which is sort of opening up, and it's like really working a lot. Okay, in the capital of Beijing, they built the Forbidden City, which is where all the emperors and their courts lived there for more than 500 years, and it's really beautiful, and it's red, and it has everything. And a bunch of gold. Now we're going to move on to the economy of China, and yeah, okay, so the GDP is 9.24 trillion US dollars, and that was in 2013. It's pretty rich. It has a major economic power. Yeah, the average wage is $62,000, and yeah. Okay, a bunch of the jobs are doctors, lawyers, businessmen, and sales and marketing. And they are very modernized in the cities like Shanghai, and like the toilets talk. Isn't that awesome? And yeah. Okay, fun facts. Yeah. The first skyscraper in China is not in China, in Shanghai is the Oriental Pearl Tower, and it is 351 meters long and has giant red balls on it, which looks awesome. And it has a glass floor on top that you can stand on, sort of like the Sears Tower, except it's on the whole floor, and you can lay on it. And it smells like poop, because like a bunch of people's feet is on it, but that's besides the point.